morning of July 2nd, 1937 began like any other for Amelia Earhart, the woman who had already captured the world's imagination. She was fearless, ambitious, and just one flight away from completing her greatest challenge yet, a journey around the entire globe. But somewhere over the Pacific, her voice crackled over the radio, and then vanished. No distress call, no wreckage, no trace. What happened to Amelia Earhart? For decades, the world has searched for answers. Was it a simple crash at sea, or something far stranger? Could she have been captured, or even survived in secret? Every theory opens a new door, and every door leads to more questions. Her disappearance remains one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. But behind the headlines lies a deeper story about ambition, exploration, and the cost of pushing human limits. So, what really happened on that final flight? Let's uncover the truth. If you love stories that challenge what we think we know about history, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and lets us bring you more deep dives into the world's most haunting mysteries. And if you think you already know what happened to Amelia Earhart, drop your theory in the comments. We might just feature it in a future episode. Long before Amelia Earhart became a mystery, she was a symbol of possibility. Born in 1897 in Atchison, Kansas, she grew up with a restless spirit. While most young women were expected to follow predictable paths, Amelia's eyes were fixed on the horizon. She watched airplanes with fascination, not fear. That curiosity would change her life and history. Her first flight experience came in 1920 at an airfield in Long Beach, California. The moment the plane lifted off, something inside her shifted. "As soon as we left the ground," she later said, "I knew I had to fly." From that day forward, her path was clear. She would not be a passenger in life. She would take the controls. Within a few years, Amelia had earned her pilot's license, set altitude records, and captured the attention of a world still new to flight. The 1920s were a time of daring aviators and fragile machines, yet she stood out, not only for her courage but for her composure. By 1932, she became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Newspapers hailed her as Lady Lindy, but she was more than a headline. She was proof that women could do what the world said they couldn't, and with each flight, Amelia wasn't just chasing records, she was chasing freedom. In the years that followed her transatlantic triumph, Amelia Earhart became more than a pilot. She became a movement. Every flight, every record, was a statement against limitation. She understood that flying wasn't just about altitude, it was about attitude. Amelia pushed herself harder each year. She set new speed records, flew across continents, and became the first woman to fly solo from Honolulu to Oakland, crossing the Pacific waters that would later define her fate. Her courage wasn't reckless. It was calculated, built on preparation and sheer resolve. She once said, "Adventure is worthwhile in itself," and she lived by it. But fame came with weight. The public saw her as fearless, but behind the calm exterior, she felt the pressure of expectations. She wasn't just flying for herself anymore. Every journey was a message to women watching from the ground, that they could break their own barriers too. Amelia's fame opened doors beyond the cockpit. She wrote books, gave lectures, and became a voice for equality. When asked why she took such risks, she answered simply, "Because I want to." In an age of conformity, that was revolutionary. Each success raised the question, what next? She had crossed oceans, set records, and inspired millions. But deep down, Amelia knew her greatest flight still awaited her. By 1937, Amelia Earhart had already conquered nearly every record worth holding. But she wanted one more. A flight so bold, so ambitious, that no woman had ever attempted it before, to circle the entire globe along the equator. It wasn't just about glory. For Amelia, it was about pushing human endurance to its edge. She envisioned the journey as a tribute to the progress of flight itself. Air travel was still young, and she wanted to show that the world was smaller than people believed. Her route would cross vast oceans, jungles, and deserts covering nearly 29,000 miles. The plan was simple on paper, but deadly in practice. Navigation tools were crude. Weather patterns were unpredictable. Fuel stops were scarce. Still, Amelia believed careful planning and skilled navigation could overcome any risk. She assembled a small team, mapped refueling points, and worked with experts to prepare her twin-engine Lockheed Electra. It was sleek, powerful, and built for distance. her companion for the world's most dangerous flight. But beneath the excitement, Amelia knew the stakes. A single mistake could end everything. And yet, she pressed forward. When a reporter asked if she feared death, she smiled faintly and said, "Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace." Amelia Earhart knew she couldn't complete this mission alone. For a journey stretching around the globe, she needed a navigator who could read the sky with absolute precision. That man was Fred Noonan, a skilled sailor, former Pan Am navigator, and one of the best in the business. He had charted air routes across the Pacific and understood the perils of flying where maps were still incomplete. Their partnership was built on mutual respect. Amelia handled the controls, Fred handled the math. He brought experience with celestial navigation, a method that used the stars to guide flight paths long before modern instruments existed. It was slow, complex, and left no room for error. Their aircraft, the Lockheed Electra 10E, was state-of-the-art for its time. Twin engines, a reinforced fuselage, and custom fuel tanks extending its range to nearly 4,500 kilometers. But even with these upgrades, it was a fragile vessel compared to the vastness of the Pacific. Every bolt, every gauge, every map mattered. Earhart and Noonan spent weeks preparing, studying flight plans, weather forecasts, and emergency procedures. The world saw glamour. They saw logistics and survival. Together, they would challenge the limits of human navigation and endurance. Yet, even with all the preparation, one truth lingered. No flight was ever truly safe. By the time Amelia announced her plan, the world was watching. Newspapers across continents followed every move, every preparation. This wasn't just another record attempt. It was a global event. In the 1930s, aviation symbolized progress, and Amelia stood at its front line. People saw in her flight a promise that the world was finally within reach. Governments tracked her route. Radio operators across the Pacific prepared to relay messages. Photographers documented her departure from every airfield. For a brief moment, humanity seemed united by a single story, a woman daring to circle the planet. Yet behind the excitement, tension simmered. The Pacific was vast, unpredictable, and barely mapped. Storms could rise without warning. Navigation relied on fragile radio links and the alignment of stars. Many experts quietly doubted her odds. Amelia remained composed, refusing to let uncertainty cloud her resolve. She understood the risks but refused to be defined by them. "Please know," she wrote to her husband before takeoff, "I am aware of the hazards, but I want to do it because I want to." That letter would later haunt history. As the world cheered her on, no one realized they were witnessing the beginning of one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. Amelia Earhart's plan was bold: to circle the globe along the equator, the longest route possible. Her journey would cross some of the most remote and dangerous regions on Earth. Starting from Oakland, California, she would fly east, passing through South America, across the Atlantic to Africa, then through India, Southeast Asia, and finally the Pacific. Every leg demanded precision. A single miscalculation could mean disaster. Her first attempt in March 1937 ended abruptly. During takeoff from Hawaii, a landing gear failure damaged the Electra. The mission was postponed, forcing repairs and months of delay. Amelia, unfazed, reworked the plan. The second attempt would reverse direction, this time east to west, taking advantage of better weather patterns and political permissions. By May, she was back in the air. The flight began smoothly. Over Africa, she admired the deserts below. In Asia, she faced monsoon rains and rough conditions. Despite setbacks, each stop brought her closer to the Pacific. After nearly 6 weeks in the air, Amelia reached Lae, New Guinea, just one leg from the finish line. Ahead lay 2,500 miles of open ocean and a tiny island called Howland, barely visible on a map. It was the most dangerous stretch of all. And as she prepared for takeoff, neither Amelia nor Fred could have known this would be their last flight. July 2nd, 1937. The sky over Lae, New Guinea, was heavy with clouds. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan took off at dawn, bound for Howland Island, a speck of land in the middle of the Pacific, smaller than many city parks. To find it, they would have to navigate over 2,500 miles of open water with nothing but stars, compasses, and radio bearings. For the first several hours, things went smoothly. The Electra's engines held steady. But as they flew deeper into the Pacific, conditions worsened. Thick clouds obscured Noonan's celestial readings. Winds pushed them off course. Their maps, already incomplete, offered little help. They radioed periodic updates, but their signals grew weaker. The U.S. Coast Guard ship Itasca, stationed near Howland, tried to guide them in. Static filled the airwaves. Messages were broken, timing uncertain. At one point, Amelia's voice came through faintly, calm but urgent. "We must be on you," she said, "but cannot see you." The Itasca fired signal flares, hoping to catch her eye. No response. Fuel was running low. Clouds and radio interference turned the vast sky into a trap. Somewhere out there, two of the most experienced aviators in the world were flying blind, searching for an island they might never find. As the hours passed, radio operators aboard the Itasca strained to catch every syllable from Amelia Earhart. Her voice, faint and distant, broke through the static in short bursts. Each message carried mounting tension. She sounded composed, but urgency was creeping in. At 7:42 a.m., she made her final confirmed call. "We are on the line, 157-337. We are running north and south." It was a navigation reference, but without precise bearings, it offered little help. The Itasca replied again and again, sending Morse code signals and spoken responses, yet Amelia never acknowledged them. Either her receiver had failed, or interference drowned out their voices. Moments later, silence. No more transmissions, no mayday, no goodbye. For radio operators, it was surreal. One moment she was there, the next, gone. They logged the time, noted her last words, and kept listening, hour after hour, hoping for another signal. Nothing came. At that point, the Electra had likely been in the air for over 20 hours. Fuel reserves were critically low. If they missed Howland, there was nowhere else to go. Amelia Earhart's final transmission would become one of the most haunting sound bites in history. A calm voice fading into an empty sky. After that final transmission, the world waited. For hours, radio operators from Hawaii to California listened for even a flicker of her voice. None came. The Itasca sent out distress calls, sweeping every frequency. The Pacific, however, answered with silence. By nightfall, it was clear something had gone terribly wrong. The U.S. Navy launched an immediate search. Ships and aircraft scoured thousands of square miles, retracing every possible route from Leh to Howland Island. They searched coastlines, coral reefs, and open waters, hoping to find wreckage, a raft, or any trace of Amelia and Fred. Days turned into weeks. Nothing. No oil slick. No floating debris. Not even a single confirmed radio echo. It was as though the ocean had swallowed them whole. Families, friends, and fans around the world clung to hope. Newspapers ran headlines asking if she'd landed on another island. Some believed she was still alive, stranded and waiting for rescue. Others began to accept the unthinkable, that Amelia Earhart, the world's most famous pilot, had vanished without a trace. As the search continued, one chilling fact became undeniable. In all of recorded aviation history, no disappearance had ever been so sudden, so total, or so enduring. The disappearance of Amelia Earhart triggered one of the most intense search efforts in history. Within hours, the U.S. Navy dispatched ships, planes, and patrols across the Pacific. President Franklin D. Roosevelt personally authorized the mission. For nearly 2 weeks, the skies above Howland Island buzzed with reconnaissance aircraft, scanning endless waves for signs of life. The Navy's flagship, the USS Lexington, covered more than 150,000 square miles of ocean. Spotters peered from open cockpits, marking coordinates, chasing shadows on the water. Every whitecap looked like a clue, every dark patch a possibility, but each turned to nothing. The Coast Guard extended its reach to nearby islands, Baker, Gardner, and Nikumaroro, places barely charted. They sent messages into the void, hoping Amelia's radio might still be alive. Some operators claimed to hear faint signals, voices repeating coordinates or cries for help. None were ever verified. By mid-July, the search consumed millions of dollars and yielded no answers. Reluctantly, the Navy called it off. Official reports listed Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan as lost at sea. Yet for many, the search had just begun. Private expeditions, amateur radio enthusiasts, and later generations of explorers refused to accept silence as an ending. Because mysteries like this don't fade. They echo. When the official search ended, it left behind more questions than answers. The Pacific was vast, but how could two skilled aviators flying a bright silver plane simply vanish? The ocean gave no hint. No floating wreckage, no life vests, no oil slicks drifting with the tide, just emptiness. For experts, the lack of evidence was baffling. In most crashes, debris surfaces within hours. But in this case, nothing. The sea around Howland was deep, but not immeasurable. If the Electra went down, why hadn't even a single fragment washed ashore? Some argued that ocean currents scattered the wreckage beyond reach. Others believed the aircraft broke apart on impact and sank intact to the seafloor. Either way, the Pacific became a grave with no marker. Families and fans found no closure. How could a woman so famous, tracked by radio and radar, disappear into thin air? For scientists, this was a puzzle. For the public, it was heartbreak. And yet, absence breeds imagination. The longer no evidence appeared, the more theories emerged. Perhaps she hadn't crashed at all. Perhaps she landed somewhere else. When truth is buried too deep, stories rise to the surface. The simplest explanation often feels like the most believable. For decades, many experts have supported what's known as the crash and sink theory. According to this view, Amelia Earhart simply ran out of fuel while searching for Howland Island. Unable to locate it, she and Fred Noonan were forced to ditch the Electra into the ocean. This theory fits the timeline. Her last transmission came when fuel reserves were nearly gone. If she was flying low, straining to spot the island, a small miscalculation in heading could have pushed her dozens of miles off course. In the featureless Pacific, that was enough to seal her fate. Once the engines died, the plane likely hit the water and sank quickly. The Electra's lightweight frame could have disintegrated on impact or vanished into deep trenches, far beyond the reach of 1930s technology. Even modern expeditions struggle to search depths exceeding 18,000 feet. Supporters argue that this is the only theory fully supported by physics, timing, and radio logs. It requires no conspiracy, no cover-up, only bad luck and the limits of early aviation. Yet for others, this answer feels too simple. How could such an iconic mystery end in silence with no trace, no proof? And that doubt has kept the search alive. If Amelia Earhart didn't vanish beneath the waves, could she have survived the crash? That question gave rise to one of the most persistent theories, that she and Fred Noonan landed on Gardner Island, now called Nikumaroro, part of the remote Phoenix Islands. The theory first gained attention in 1940 when British officials discovered human bones, a woman's shoe and fragments of what looked like a navigation device on the island. The remains were examined, but wartime records were vague and later misplaced. Some early reports claimed the bones belonged to a man. Others suggested they matched Earhart's stature. The debate has never been settled. Researchers from the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, TIGAR, have led multiple expeditions to the island. They found pieces of aircraft aluminum buttons and other relics possibly dating to the 1930s. Satellite images even show coral ridges resembling landing tracks. According to this theory, Amelia and Fred, low on fuel, may have spotted the flat coral island and made an emergency landing. Stranded without rescue, they likely survived for days or weeks before succumbing to exposure. No definitive proof has ever been found. But every new clue, every shard of metal, reignites hope that her final chapter might not have ended at sea. As World War II loomed, another theory began to spread, one far more dramatic. Some believed Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan didn't crash at all, but were captured by the Japanese after straying into their territory. According to this version, the Electra may have landed or gone down near the Marshall Islands, then under Japanese control. Local islanders later claimed to have seen a woman and a man taken by Japanese soldiers. Some described a silver plane crashing near Mili Atoll. Decades later, American servicemen stationed in the Pacific recalled hearing similar rumors that two foreigners resembling Earhart and Noonan were detained and later executed as spies. This theory gained traction during the 1960s and 70s, fueled by wartime secrecy and distrust. Old photographs surfaced, one showing a woman on a dock in the Marshall Islands, claimed by some to be Amelia herself. Yet forensic analysis later disputed that. Skeptics point out the lack of Japanese records confirming such prisoners. Still, the theory persists, especially among those unwilling to accept a simple crash. It offers a more human story, one of survival, capture, and tragedy. But without hard evidence, it remains speculation, hovering between history and myth. Among the more intriguing theories is one that blurs the line between adventure and espionage. Some believe Amelia Earhart's final flight was not just a record attempt, but a covert mission for the U.S. government. According to this idea, she was gathering intelligence on Japanese military activities across the Pacific under the guise of a world flight. Supporters point to the timing. In 1937, tensions between the United States and Japan were rising. Strategic islands along her route were of great interest to Washington. Her aircraft, the Lockheed Electra, was advanced for its time. Equipped with extra radio gear and modified for long-range reconnaissance, features that fueled suspicion. One version claims that after being captured, she was later repatriated to the U.S. under a new identity, her mission classified to avoid diplomatic fallout. Others say she perished in custody after completing her reconnaissance. Historians remain skeptical. No declassified documents or credible witnesses have supported these claims. Still, the theory endures, partly because it explains why such an experienced pilot vanished without a trace and why some government files remain sealed. It paints Amelia not as a victim of chance, but as a participant in history's hidden games. Among all the speculation, one of the strangest ideas emerged decades later, that Amelia Earhart survived the flight and returned to the United States under a new name. This claim, known as the double life theory, suggests she lived out her remaining years in quiet anonymity. The theory gained attention in the 1970s after a woman named Irene Bolam, a retired banker from New Jersey, was accused of being Earhart. A book published in 1970 claimed striking physical similarities and alleged inconsistencies in Bolam's background. Photographs of both women were compared, and supporters pointed to matching facial features, stature, and even scars. Bolam, furious, denied the accusations and filed a lawsuit. She produced legal documents, birth records, and witnesses confirming her identity. The case was dismissed, but public curiosity persisted. To believers, her denial only deepened the mystery. Modern facial analysis and historical records have since debunked the claim. Still, the theory lingers, appealing to those who prefer a secret survival over a tragic ending. It captures a universal hope that heroes don't vanish, they simply choose to disappear. Yet without verifiable proof, it remains folklore, a story born from longing rather than evidence. In 1940, 3 years after Amelia Earhart vanished, a British colonial officer on Nikumaroro reported something extraordinary: a partial human skeleton, a woman's shoe, and a sextant box. The discovery immediately raised suspicion. Could these remains belong to the world's most famous missing pilot? The bones were sent to Fiji for examination. A colonial doctor measured them and concluded they belonged to a man. The evidence was stored, then lost. For decades, the case sat dormant. But in the late 20th century, researchers re-examined the original notes. Using modern forensic analysis, scientists argued that the bone measurements more closely matched a woman of Earhart's height and build. The site also contained artifacts, fragments of glass bottles, a piece of aircraft aluminum, and remnants of a makeshift campfire. Each clue suggested survival, not immediate death. Yet none could be definitively tied to Amelia or Fred. In 2018, a new forensic study used advanced imaging to compare the bone data against Earhart's known body proportions. The results claimed a 99% match. Critics dismissed the conclusion, citing incomplete data and missing evidence. Even so, the mystery of those bones keeps drawing attention. They may be the closest link between myth and truth, a silent reminder that some answers lie just beyond reach. In recent years, technology has breathed new life into Amelia Earhart's mystery. Advanced forensics, sonar imaging, and deep-sea exploration have all been brought to bear on the case. What was once limited to guesswork now relies on hard data, and yet the answers remain elusive. Forensic experts have reanalyzed radio logs, weather data, and flight paths with modern software. Simulations suggest that small navigation errors could have diverted the Electra hundreds of miles from Howland Island. Satellite imaging has revealed unusual shapes on the ocean floor, potential wreckage, though none confirmed. In 2009, search teams led by the Nauticos organization used deep-sea sonar to scan vast sections of the Pacific. Their equipment mapped trenches and coral ridges thousands of feet below. Despite months of work, no trace of the Electra appeared. Other expeditions to Nikumaroro uncovered objects like fragments of a mirror, a pocket knife, and aluminum panels possibly consistent with Earhart's aircraft. Forensic analysts have also applied facial recognition and voice-matching tools to historical photos and radio recordings. Each discovery sparks headlines but ends in uncertainty. Even DNA testing offers no closure. Without confirmed remains, science can only circle the mystery, never land on it. Amelia's disappearance has become a proving ground for technology, and a reminder that not all mysteries yield to progress. Whenever a great mystery lingers, whispers of secrecy follow. In Amelia Earhart's case, those whispers turn toward the U.S. government. Researchers and journalists have long questioned whether official files hold clues still unseen by the public. Some declassified. Documents mention the search efforts and early intelligence reports, but others remain redacted or missing entirely. Historians argue that wartime priorities may have buried or destroyed valuable evidence, including intercepted signals, reconnaissance photos, or diplomatic communications. In the 1990s, Freedom of Information Act requests revealed fragments of correspondence hinting that military intelligence tracked unknown radio transmissions days after Amelia's last call. These logs, though inconclusive, suggested the Electra's radio might have stayed active longer than assumed. Other reports reference classified operations in the Pacific during that same period. Some researchers believe Earhart's disappearance overlapped with covert mapping missions, prompting secrecy to protect unrelated military programs. Official agencies maintain that all relevant records have been released. Still, unanswered gaps persist. Files once held by naval intelligence, now missing, fuel suspicion that the full story was quietly sealed decades ago. It may not be conspiracy, just bureaucracy. But the silence of governments often invites imagination, and as long as those files remain locked or incomplete, the truth about Amelia Earhart will always feel just beyond our reach. Amelia Earhart's disappearance did more than spark a mystery. It created a legend. In the years that followed, her name became a symbol woven into books, films, and classrooms. She wasn't remembered only as a missing pilot, but as a voice of courage that transcended her fate. For young women, she represented possibility. In an era that confined ambition, Amelia proved that skill and determination could rewrite limits. Her flight suits, her confident stare, her calm in the face of risk, all became cultural icons. Every generation since has rediscovered her story, seeing in it their own struggle for freedom and purpose. Filmmakers and authors transformed her final flight into myth. Some portrayed her as a hero lost to the sea, others as a woman who dared to touch the edge of the unknown. Schools named programs after her. Pilots invoked her spirit before crossing oceans. Even NASA honored her legacy, naming space-bound projects that carried her pioneering message beyond the sky. Her story endures not because of how it ended, but because of what it began, a reminder that progress is born from those willing to risk everything for discovery. Amelia Earhart didn't just disappear. She became part of human imagination itself. To understand Amelia Earhart, you must understand her relationship with risk. She didn't chase danger for fame. She saw it as part of the path forward. For her, flying wasn't reckless, it was a test of mastery. Every mile she traveled was a step beyond fear, an act of defiance against the limits society placed on her. Amelia often said that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the resolve to act in spite of it. Psychologists studying her life point out that such people aren't thrill seekers. They're goal-driven. They weigh the risks, accept them, and move forward because standing still feels worse. To Amelia, each flight carried uncertainty, but so did inaction. She thrived on the edge between control and chaos, where instinct and discipline met. Her confidence came from preparation, her calm from acceptance. That mindset shaped her every decision. When she set out on her final journey, she understood the danger better than anyone. But to her, not trying would have been the greater failure. History remembers her as fearless. But she wasn't. She was something rarer, someone who recognized fear, then flew straight through it. That's why her story endures. It speaks to every person who's ever risked everything for a dream. Before Amelia Earhart, aviation was almost entirely a man's world. Women were discouraged from flying, often dismissed as too fragile for the cockpit. Amelia shattered that idea. Her success forced the world to see that courage and skill had no gender. She wasn't just flying for herself. Every record she set, every speech she gave carried a message that women belonged wherever ambition could take them. She mentored young female pilots, helped found the 99s, an international organization of women aviators, and fought for equal access to aviation schools and flight programs. Her achievements inspired a generation. After her disappearance, women like Jacqueline Cochran, Bessie Coleman, and later astronauts like Sally Ride and Eileen Collins cited Amelia as proof that boundaries were made to be crossed. Even today, female pilots reference her name with quiet reverence. Airlines, space agencies, and military programs continue to honor her legacy. Each flight taken by a woman in uniform or commercial service traces its lineage back to her. Amelia didn't just open the sky, she kept it open. Her courage redefined what women could do, not by claiming superiority, but by demanding equality in the language of action. Through her, flight became more than movement. It became liberation. Even decades after her disappearance, the search for Amelia Earhart has never stopped. Each generation brings new explorers, new tools, and renewed hope of solving the mystery that's haunted history for nearly a century. Modern expeditions have focused on two key areas: the seafloor near Howland Island and the coral shores of Nikumaroro. Using advanced sonar, underwater drones, and deep-diving submersibles, search teams have mapped thousands of square miles of ocean. The cost of these missions runs into the millions, yet the promise of discovery keeps them going. In 2019, explorer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, led a major expedition to Nikumaroro. His team used high-resolution imaging to scan the island's coast and the depths surrounding it. They found no confirmed wreckage, but the search renewed global interest. Private research groups, funded by aviation enthusiasts and philanthropists, continue to chase fresh leads, analyzing old radio signals, refining flight path simulations, and revisiting eyewitness accounts. Each attempt pushes technology further and proves one thing: Amelia Earhart's story still matters. Every expedition is more than a search for wreckage. It's a tribute to the human need for answers, because somewhere beneath those waves, or within those islands, a final clue still waits to be found. Some mysteries fade with time. Amelia Earhart's only grows stronger. After nearly 9 decades, theories about her fate continue to multiply, each one reflecting humanity's refusal to accept uncertainty. Some cling to the idea that she perished at sea, her plane resting undisturbed on the Pacific floor. Others insist she survived as a castaway on a lonely island, her voice lost to the wind. A few claim she was captured, hidden, or even rescued under another name. None have been proven. All refuse to disappear. What makes her case unique is not the lack of evidence, but the depth of fascination. Scientists, historians, conspiracy theorists, and ordinary dreamers all see something of themselves in her story: courage, curiosity, or the ache of unanswered questions. Each generation reinterprets her disappearance through its own lens. In the 1940s, it symbolized wartime sacrifice. In the 1970s, it embodied independence. Today, it represents both the promise and the peril of human ambition. The truth may already lie somewhere, silent and unrecognized. But the allure of mystery often outlasts reality. People don't just want closure, they want wonder. And Amelia Earhart's story, grounded in fact yet lifted by myth, offers both in perfect balance. Nearly a century has passed since Amelia Earhart vanished into the Pacific, yet her name still carries the same quiet power. Every retelling, every expedition, every theory circles one truth. Her story endures because it touches something universal. We see in her not only a pioneer, but a reflection of our own need to explore. She stood at the edge of the known world and kept going. That impulse, to reach beyond sight, is what built civilizations, crossed oceans, and sent rockets into space. Her disappearance reminds us that discovery comes with risk. Every great step forward demands a price. Amelia paid it willingly, knowing that progress rarely comes from safety. And maybe that's why her mystery remains unsolved. Because in some way we need it that way. Her story isn't just about where she went. It's about what she represented. Curiosity, courage, possibility. Even without a final answer, Amelia Earhart achieved something few ever do. She became timeless. Long after the last signal faded, her voice still echoes, not through static, but through every person who dares to leave the familiar and face the unknown. Her plane may have fallen silent, but her legacy never landed.